Good afternoon, everybody. My Haida name is Lannis. My English name is Tamara Davidson. I'd like to thank everyone that is attending today's event. I'd also like to thank Haida Nation for the space that we are gathered here today and to acknowledge the 9 allied tribes of the Tsimshian Nations. We're joined here today with David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, Chief Marilyn Slett, Chief Counselor of the Heiltsuk Tribal Council, Gaagwiis, President of the Council of the Haida Nation. I'd also like to say thank you to the Coastal First Nations for standing with us today. For decades, you have led the fight to protect this coast, and you have spoken up for these waters, defended the communities, and shown that a strong economy and a healthy environment can go hand in hand. Because of your leadership, these waters are better protected for future generations. Today's announcement reflects what can be achieved when we work together in partnership. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Premier of British Columbia, David Eby.
Thanks very much, Tamara. It's good to see everybody here. Nice to see you, Your Worship, Mayor Pond. And thank you so much to Coastal First Nations for the welcome to the territory. We had a wonderful conversation this morning, and it's an honor to be here with you. I want to thank particularly Gaagwiis Nation for the space and for the welcome to the territory here today. Lots of cruise ship activity out here. Exactly. It was earlier this month that the Prime Minister and I formalized a prosperity agreement between the federal government and British Columbia. This agreement is a significant agreement for our province. It sets out a path for British Columbia and for Canada, a multi-generational investment that will ensure prosperity not just for today, but for tomorrow as well. It is the largest federal investment agreement in British Columbia in the history of our province. And yet, that was not the most significant part of the agreement. The most significant part of the agreement for British Columbians, and certainly for Coastal First Nations and for people who live here in the beautiful northwest of our province and across the country, was the commitment within the agreement to ensure that the oil tanker ban off of the pristine north coast here remains in place. This is a moratorium on oil tankers that has existed for more than 50 years. It has existed independent of political party. Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney agreed on the importance, and anyone who has been up here and seen the beauty of the North Coast understands why it is essential, but also anyone who's been up here and seen the weather conditions and some of the threats that can come in, for example, the Hecate Strait, also understands why this is a perilous place to send an oil tanker. These are hard waters, and ensuring that the coast is protected from Exxon Valdez style disaster that we've had previews of in the Nathan E. Stewart ship sinking that spilled diesel along the Central Coast, or the sinking of a BC ferry on the Inside Passage, knows how crucial and real the threat is of a spill here on the coast. The agreement with the federal government provides certainty for business. It provides a path forward to grow our economy, but it also recognizes that for British Columbians, for Canadians, our shared values of ensuring that economic development goes hand in hand with environmental protection, with partnership with First Nations, and support for local communities are values that we will not abandon and we will stand strong for every single time. Now, the work that has been done by coastal First Nations here on the coast, by North Coast residents, is remarkable. Together, the community here has built an economy that is worth in excess of $3 billion annually in economic activity, dependent on a clean coast, dependent on ensuring the protection of the natural environment. For people who live in my home community in Vancouver, when they tuck into a piece of fish for dinner, a piece of salmon, this is as important to you as it is to the people who would have to live with the consequences of an oil spill, a bitumen spill off of the coast here. Now, the multi-billion-dollar economy that's been built here, that is built on a sustainable coast, is not a given. It has had to be defended, and I heard from the Coastal First Nations leaders in a meeting this morning how their people have been defending this coast for thousands and thousands of years from all kinds of threats, and that work continues today. It is not a given that the oil tanker ban would continue. In fact, there was a very serious opposition to the idea that our province would stand up for the North Coast tanker ban, led by the BC Conservatives. And the proposal from the BC Conservatives and from the federal Conservatives was that we essentially draw a line on the map from heavy oil in Alberta to the coast for the pipeline. And the reckless nature of that proposal to jeopardize the multi-billion-dollar economy that already exists here on the coast, the fragile consensus about how to manage growth here and ensure we're developing the economy and creating employment while protecting what's absolutely precious to all Canadians, was bizarre. And it shows a clear choice about where we can go as a province. If the BC Conservatives had been in power, they would have worked to ensure that the pipeline was built through here. We would have lost the North Coast tanker ban. Heavy oil tankers would be in precarious waters, threatening a multi-billion-dollar economy. We would not have had an agreement with the federal government for more than $20 billion in benefits for major projects for British Columbians. A less safe coast, a multi-billion-dollar economy at risk, and a loss of benefits for British Columbians for what? Because of an obsession with a culture war that disregards the voices of Indigenous people and First Nations in this province, the refusal to work together to reach consensus to find a path forward, and the insistence of a single perspective as being the one that needs to carry the day. Now, I think that the way to build this province is to work in partnership, to hear other people's perspectives, to find a path forward together. And that's what we've done in our agreement with the federal government. And in doing so, I was honored to stand with these First Nations leaders behind me when we signed this original pledge to protect the coast. When I signed that document, I meant it. And when we stood together to protect the coast, we did so in the shared recognition that it was a commitment to work together, not just on the defensive to protect the coast from an oil tanker spill, but also to work together to deliver a sustainable, growing economy for all British Columbians. And that is work that is not over with the signing of this agreement with the federal government to protect the tanker ban. In fact, this is work that is just beginning and is building on incredible work that has been done by the Coastal First Nations over many years, including through the Great Bear Rainforest and the Great Bear Sea work that we were so proud to support recently. I want to thank the leaders of the Coastal First Nations. I want to thank every resident here in the Northwest who stood up, who wrote, who advocated for protecting this coast for generations to come. All British Columbians for standing up for a North Coast while recognizing the importance of developing our economy, creating jobs for everybody, because we can do all of these things, but only if we work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. And I'd also like to say thank you. We know that partnerships are so important. I'd like to thank the mayor and council of the city of Prince Rupert that's also here with us. We know that in rural and remote communities, our neighbors are going to stand with us in partnership and fight for what's right. So thank you for being here today. At this time, I would like to call our next speaker, Chief Marilyn Slett, from the Chief Counselor of the Heiltsuk Tribal Council and President of Coastal First Nations.
Gaagwiis. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our leadership. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. And we're really pleased to be hosted today in this beautiful facility. Thank you, Kakatla, for your hospitality. We stand here today with the province to celebrate the fact that the North Coast will remain protected from the threat of an oil spill. We shared this when the announcement was made a few weeks ago, and we share it today, that it is a good day for our people. It's a good day for our marine relatives and the over 400 species of fish that reside on the BC coast. As Coastal First Nations, we want to thank our communities, their leadership, and the people of the North Coast for standing with us over the past year to ensure this important piece of legislation remained in place in its entirety. Your strength, your commitment is what brought us here today. We also want to express our gratitude to Premier Eby for his steadfast support of the oil tanker moratorium. We appreciate your words and your commitment to our coast. Through the Canada-BC Cooperative Prosperity Agreement, BC has successfully secured a federal commitment to uphold the tanker ban. We are happy that both governments have once again recognized what we have always known, that the Great Bear Sea is no place for oil tankers. On behalf of our leadership that is here today and those that can't be, we want to express that this is a day to celebrate and to uphold the protection and the future protection of the North Coast. And we really appreciate all of the work. It's been decades. It's been steadfast over the last year to bring us here today. And Gaagwiis for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Slett, for your leadership and commitment to protecting these lands and waters. It is now my honor to introduce Gaagwiis Jason Alsop, President of the Council of the Haida Nation.
How Tamara, Singai La, good day. It's good to be here today in beautiful Prince Rupert to come together as the Coastal First Nations with the Premier in British Columbia and celebrate working together in our cooperation as the nations together with government. So it's really happy to be here today. When people think about British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia, they think of our coast. They think of these oceans, of Haida Nation, of the Great Bear Rainforest and the seas and all the life that it gives and sustains. You know, our nations, many of our nations have our origin stories that come out of the ocean. Our oceans are sacred. They hold supernatural forces. And we have the responsibility to care for our homes, the lands and the waters for well over 14,000 years. And today, again, we get to celebrate and acknowledge this upholding of responsibility that we share as the Indigenous governments with British Columbia and all people share to look after this rich marine ecosystem and all that it provides for us. It's one of the last remaining temperate rainforests on Earth, on this planet, and we all have a responsibility to look after that together. This area between Haida Gwaii and the North Coast, Central Coast is home to 20% of the world's remaining wild salmon. And that's a sacred responsibility that we hold to ensure that this wild salmon survive and thrive long into the future for future generations to enjoy. So this area, the North Coast, Haida Gwaii, the Great Bear Rainforest, is not just a source of current economic livelihoods. It's our home, and it's been our home for thousands of years and will be our home for thousands of years to come and generations to come. And it will never be a place for crude oil tankers. So again, Hawa to the Premier for standing with us in protecting the coast. And it's been a partnership and a collaborative approach since the very beginning back in November when we signed the North Coast Protection Declaration. So as the Premier and Marilyn have spoke to, it's not just about kind of what we're against or what we're saying no to. It's about the economy and finding the balance between stewardship and economy. And for the past 25 years, through Coastal First Nations, the Great Bear Initiative, we've been focused on building sustainable, conservation-based economy. And our track record shows when we work together, we can build forward-looking, innovative, and creative economic partnerships for the benefit of all, for the nations, for British Columbians, for Canadians, and an economy that is built in partnership, again, with provincial governments, with federal governments, and has been incredibly successful over the years. Our Great Bear Rainforest agreements have contributed over $2 billion to the region and the British Columbia economy. And our coastal economy in the north supports 30% of our workforce and worth billions of dollars that relies on looking after these oceans and keeping them safe and healthy and productive. So we must continue to work together for the care of this important part of the world for now and for the long term, together with governments, Indigenous nations, municipal communities, all Indigenous people, all people need to, again, come together and accept that responsibility and continue to reconcile, continue to think creatively about ways that we can support the overall well-being of all people who've come to call this place home. Again, now together we can show how we can strike this balance between stewardship and economy, and in the spirit of reconciliation and in the face of global politics and climate change, that we can show success. So our home is not, it's not an untapped opportunity. It's an area that has a history. It has been exploited by natural resource extraction in the past, and for well over 100 years. And we've seen, little investment in our communities over those years. And so it's really an opportunity for us to learn from the past and to plan for the future and do that together. There's a lot of pressure that is coming to the coast that comes with development in the region, and we've together as governments and people are committed to focus our attention on preparing ourselves for the shipping and the impacts, and making sure we're mindful of the interconnectedness of all things as we go down this path and find that balance between stewardship and economy. One example just to highlight is a recent study found that there will be a 217% increase in shipping between Canada and Asia, and LNG alone will increase traffic in some routes by 450%. adding more than 1,000 vessel transits a year through remote and sensitive ecosystems. So this is the challenge in front of us, but also the opportunity to act now and work together to prepare. So this illustrates that urgent need to look after our coast, uphold our responsibility for a sustainable economy, and build on the work that we've done over the last 25 years and the work that the nations have done for thousands of years. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot to prepare for, and we take this moment to take a breath and celebrate, upholding the responsibility to look after the oceans and the coast from the threat of crude oil tankers and bitumen, reflect on our partnership and our success together, and recognize that together we can continue to build on that, working together in that spirit to build a durable economic partnerships, invest in infrastructure needed to ensure safe and reliable shipping, protect our environment, and create long-lasting benefits for Canadians and for British Columbians and our nations, our communities, and all while protecting our coast and building our economy. So, hawa for listening.
Thank you, Gaagwiis, for your remarks, and for the Council of the Haida Nation's leadership in protecting the North Coast. And thank you for everyone that is here today, and we will now move to questions from the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Davidson, and thank you everyone for joining us here today in Prince Rupert. We're going to take questions from the press now. All members of the media called upon will have one question and one follow-up. For media on the phone line, please remember to press *1 to enter the queue and to unmute yourself when called upon. We're going to start here on the floor with Jamin Gandhi from CFTK Terrace.
Hi. Hello, Premier Eby.
Hello.
Thank you for protecting this area from the oil tanker ban. Keeping it protected. So there's been a growing interest in putting data centers in this region for its cool climate. However, that puts the environment and the fish at risk, especially, as well as the folks in this region are salmon people. Would you consider putting a moratorium on data centers to protect the fish and the culture of the salmon people?
There's proposals for data centers basically everywhere right now. It's a remarkable phenomenon. And so as a province, we saw this coming. The energy minister and his team put in place a framework to make sure that if any data center were approved for British Columbia, it would have to cross a number of important hurdles. The reason for having this framework in place is currently the rules, or previously the rules in British Columbia were, if you showed up and applied to BC Hydro to plug into the grid, you just go next in line. And we just work through the line that way. But the volume and the scale of the data center proposals, and it started with crypto mining, coming to British Columbia because of our affordable hydroelectricity, because of the climate reducing cooling requirements, meant that we had to put this framework in place. And the framework is pretty straightforward. There needs to be a significant return to the public from any proposed data center. That is a financial return, that is an employment return. There has to be closed loop systems to make sure that they are not using limited water resources. And there has to be some significant public benefit. It is hard to see in some of these proposals the public benefit, especially in a province where we can use our electricity to decarbonize industries, to create additional jobs through natural resources sector, through manufacturing. And there's a competition for this electricity because it is cheap. It is our competitive advantage. So any data center proposal coming to British Columbia would face significant scrutiny from the province, from local governments, from First Nations before ever being approved under this framework. We don't have a prohibition, but we do have an expectation that when we're talking about using our electricity, when we're talking about developments like this, they have to benefit the province.
For the follow-up question, what does it really take? Because data centers are the one that are bringing in a lot of the economy in a lot of places of the world. You can't just say no to them. So what is the balance? How do you balance it?
Yeah, I agree. I think there are requirements for our country to have our own AI systems in place so that we're able to be independent of the United States. I think that's an important consideration. I support the federal government's efforts around that. And at the same time, we have these huge hyperscalers coming to British Columbia saying that they want to put up massive data centers that would use all of the available electricity and use a whole bunch of water for cooling. Would deprive other industries that employ significantly more British Columbians. So between these considerations, it's not all bad, it's not all good. Making sure that the proposals fit our requirements. We've approved 3 data centers in the province. The framework is in place to ensure that any additional data centers meet the requirements. They're all available for British Columbians to review what we need to see before any additional data centers would be approved. And one of the key things is the opportunity cost. Where could that electricity be used somewhere else? Would it create more employment and more opportunity for people?
Next, we'll head to Sumi Raju with CBC.
Hi, Premier Eby.
Hello.
My question to you is, a lot of major projects have been announced for Northwest BC between the port, LNG, mines, but at the same time, we're seeing movie theaters shut down, Walmart, the BMO, and Prince Rupert. So giving people who live here less options for entertainment and affordability, what are you doing to make these places people want to live as opposed to places where people just get short-term jobs and leave?
Yeah, that's a really important question. One of the key considerations that was brought to me by mayors in the region was that there's a significant amount of industrial activity happening here, but the revenue from these activities is not coming back to local governments the way that it used to. When you had a sawmill, it was in the community, you would see the property tax revenue coming back. And so with these huge projects, whether it's the port or whether it's an LNG project, the tax base is concentrated in one community, but the impacts are felt across the region. This is one of the reasons why we entered into the agreements with local mayors here around ensuring that the benefits from these resource projects are shared, providing some stable sources of municipal income for local governments. It's why we negotiated with the federal government an additional $50 million in terms of infrastructure for communities here, with the crisis that Rupert faced around its drinking water, to impacts in terrace, like the local government not having enough money to cap its landfill. These are just unacceptable situations. So providing that resourcing ensures that communities are livable, that the infrastructure is in place. One of the things that Rupert is going to see, that Terrace is going to see, that other communities are going to see is an increase in population that's going to support local economy here, whether it's a movie theater or a bar or restaurant or local businesses. And one of the things that is going to be a reality is that infrastructure has to be in place to support all of those things. So we're working with local governments to make sure that's reality.
Next, we'll head to Aidan McCloskey with Vista Radio.
Hi, Premier. So my question, the Port of Prince Rupert continues to expand with billions of dollars in infrastructure investments, and it's a key gateway for Canadian exports to Asia. So how did today's environmental protections fit alongside the province's goal of growing the port and other major economic projects on the North Coast?
Yeah, great question. One of the remarkable things in the Northwest is just how much activity is happening here, how much opportunity there is here, and the commitment of the First Nations, of the local governments, of the people of the Northwest to ensure that that economic development is balanced with environmental protection. So today's sort of celebration about the protection of the North Coast tanker ban, as I said in my remarks, this is not the end of the story. What it does is it frees up the resources of our government and the resources of coastal First Nations and the resources of Northwest communities. Instead of fighting heavy oil pipeline and tankers that nobody wants up here, that could easily go along existing pipeline routes instead if it has to happen. Instead of fighting that thing, now we can do the work together to build on the Great Bear Sea Initiative, to talk about how do we deepen the activity that's sustainable, that helps grow the economy here and improve life in the community. We had a meeting just before this media event to talk about that. How do we advance that work? What are the opportunities for coastal First Nations and local communities to increase the guardian work that they're already doing? And to provide that support to make sure that the economic activity that takes place here, if there's ever an incident, that we have a quick and proportionate response, just like you would in the South. Those are not unreasonable asks. And I think there's a significant opportunity for us to work together to do that going forward.
Next, we will head to the phone lines, and we will start with Ben O'Hara-Byrne from Global News. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Premier. First, a shout out to my local colleagues in Prince Rupert for some fantastic questions, thought-provoking stuff. Premier Eby, on Interfor, you will have seen reports that they're about to move part of their corporate hub to Georgia. I know you met with them back in April. At least a photo on Facebook from Ravi Parmar suggests that you did. How aware were you that this was coming, and what's been your reaction to the news?
Yeah, we've been working closely with Interfor and really appreciate the efforts of the leadership to work with us, in particular, to respond to the impacts of the Trump tariffs and to advocate both here and in the United States. It's an integrated company across the border about the impacts of the tariffs, not just on British Columbians, but on Americans as well. The forest sector is under huge pressure here with tariffs that are prohibitive for sending timber and wood products into the United States. I try to understand the rationale of the president in attacking forest families in our province in this very specific way. Forest families in Quebec, forest families in New Brunswick, forest families in Saskatchewan, and preferring to import timber from Russia with lower tariff rates than from British Columbia. I don't believe that Canadian softwood lumber is a national security threat to the Americans. But I would say that Russia is. And so I try to find the logic in attacking your closest trading partner, knowing that there is obviously no logic to it. We've been working hard to diversify our markets overseas, to be able to get our wood products to other markets. It was a key part of the conversations I was having in China, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, creating additional markets, and particularly in India, where we're on the verge of signing, as I understand it, a free trade agreement, which could result in the removal of duties for Canadian lumber going to India, a massive and growing market for our wood products. It's not happy news. I understand the pressure that forestry companies are under as a result of these tariffs, trying to make these decisions as well as low prices. And we're working closely with industry and with other provinces to try to mitigate these kinds of impacts.
And Ben, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Now, you have some opponents of silicium standing right beside you on that stage today. We had another announcement. The timing is interesting. Another announcement this morning about another German company coming in to purchase LNG from silicium. What do you tell those others on stage who've opposed this project about how you're going to find the balance here between your environmental commitments and your want to grow LNG for economic reasons? How do you explain it to them?
I think that when it comes to Silicium's LNG project, one of the key communications we've made to the project proponents, the Nisga'a First Nations and their partners, is that they have work to do with other nations and with local communities, just like any other project proponent, to bring people along. And I see Nisga'a engaging in that work. The provincial government is here. If there's a role that we can play in resolving issues that nations have that they'd like to see resolved in order for projects like this to go ahead, we're there to play that role, and we will do that work. And it's something we're there to do, and it's a crucial role of the provincial government. So it's I'll say the job of the proponent and the work that the Nisga'a First Nation is doing. With the support of the provincial government to address the concerns, because in any project, when you're talking about a project that runs into the tens of billions of dollars, that involves a significant new pipeline, there will be impacts And so working with nations, working with local communities to mitigate those impacts, to reduce those impacts, to address longstanding issues is just part of how we get things done in British Columbia. The people who tell you that you can get a project like that done by ignoring First Nations, by ignoring the concerns of the local communities, drawing a line and building a pipeline are lying to you. That project will be tied up in court. That project will not have social license to proceed, and it will never get built. And we have seen that story again and again and again in this province and across the country. There is a reason why British Columbia has more projects at the Major Projects Office than any other province in Canada. There is a reason why we have $88 billion in major projects, and including projects reaching final investment decision in the next 12 months, including the largest private sector investment in Canadian history in our province. And that is because we are willing to put in the time and the energy to work with communities, to work with First Nations, to deliver these projects in partnership. And the reason why I'm really stressing that point is because the BC Conservatives right now are so obsessed with culture wars that they would put all of that economic activity at a time when our country and our province needs it more than ever, when people need jobs and opportunity, especially young people more than ever. Instead of talking about how we're going to train young people, how we're going to deliver these projects, they are obsessing about whether or not we call First Nations people, Indigenous people. The direction is that Conservative MLA should call them Indians now. That's coming from the leader of the Conservative Party. This is her major focus. A key part of her platform was to repeal the Human Rights Code, not talking about how are we going to build more housing, how are we going to get more family doctors in. When you're obsessed with American culture wars and Donald Trump, you are not building British Columbia. And there's a very clear choice. Our government is delivering these projects and these opportunities, but the way we're doing it is through partnership, and it is hard work, and it is not always a straight line, but we're committed to doing that work.
We have time for one more question, and we're going to head to Brenna Owen with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Brenna.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to pivot for a moment. And Premier, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sending a message to people across the province, both experiencing the impacts of wildfires and heading out into kind of the backcountry for the long weekend as we look to kind of a return to hotter and drier conditions heading into the long weekend.
Yeah, thanks very much. We're at this moment in this province, there are people who are returning in Clinton, British Columbia to a burned out home, to a destroyed business. And there are people who are evacuated from their homes and want to be able to go back. When you are out for the long weekend, when you're in the backcountry, fire awareness is absolutely crucial. Parts of the province have never been drier than they are right now, especially in the southeast of the province. And so extreme caution, please. Your one act could impact people's lives forever. And at the same time, I want to thank all those British Columbians who have stepped up to support people who have been impacted by wildfire so far, whether it's our frontline firefighters, whether it's the volunteers who are supporting those who are displaced from those homes, and especially the people of those communities who have been affected. We're thinking about you, and our government is committed to stand with and support you going forward.
And Brenna, do you have a follow-up for the Premier? Brenna, are you with us?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I think that's okay. Thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Wonderful. And that concludes today's event. Thank you, everyone.